you made it. Heather West, Anna Maria, Michelle, Pam Keith. I love your channel. Thanks, Pam. Dandelions and Daisies. Good, interesting name. S. Cisco. Vicky Moreau from Texas. Renee Catagnis, good to see you here. JW, saved in 88, new subscriber. Thanks for subscribing. If you want to participate in the chat, I've set it to subscribers only. It's a little bit of a sensitive material show, so I kind of want to slow down the chat, and I just sort of really want those who know me in the chat kind of thing. So that's part of the reason for that. Tracy from Alabama, Soul Survivor, good afternoon. Marley from Kentucky, hi Marley. Jojo from Kokomo. Kansas City, Missouri. Tracy Haitley from England, evening. Stone Cold, Lisa Colburn from Ontario, Canada. Angie Cameron, hi there, hello. D. Moss, Patricia Burns, regular commenter on Patreon. Tony Johnson, hi from Ohio. Debbie D, if I saw that correctly. Rua, am I saying that right? From Ireland. Jen Ballard, Arkansas. Joe Finney, watching from Michigan, hi there. Once we hit 1,000, I'm going to kind of get into it, although I must say I've got quite a lot to talk about. Let's just carry on. Meeting and greeting. Sinead Devlin, love that name. I actually bumped into Sinead O'Connor once backstage, quite a memorable. Sheila Lewis, hello from Germany. Lawanda Griffiths, Tennessee, oh really, okay. Wanda Smith, another person from Tennessee. It's good to have people here from Tennessee. Melanie Balicki, hi. Vic Walker, hello from Switzerland. Bob Van Laura. Julie, thanks a lot, Julie. Thanks for all you do, thanks. Lempole, hello from Tennessee. Interesting name. Gabby V, Portland, Oregon. Cindy Hillis, also from Oregon. How's Oregon doing? I believe it's pretty, you're having some fires there. Debbie Roberts from Liverpool. Tracy from Sydney, Australia. Spider Lady from Ireland. Shayla Vale, hello from the Netherlands again. Okay. Hello to the Netherlands. I see the Netherlands playing beach volleyball. Did they win that? Marilyn Abreu, hello from New York City. Deb Van Kochnet, hello from Buffalo, New York. I probably mispronounced that. Sheila Spires, hello from beautiful East Tennessee. Well, that's the area we're talking about. Brick Sloth, hi from rural, didn't quite catch it. Chrissy Ann. Introduce your puppy. Okay. Here is Timmy. And he always gets, I'm just trying to put his feet in the right place. He always gets very like me as soon as I sit in this chair, I think, because he knows he's probably not going to hear from me. He's not going to get too much attention from me for a while, so all he knows that when I start this, he's definitely going to get attention. I don't know. I'm not sure which one it is. Debbie Z, hello from Elizabethton, Tennessee. Okay. Timmy, someone says people are saying hello. Okay, looks like he wants to scratch and lick. Handsome Timmy. Okay. I see we're on to 910. As soon as we hit 1,000, I'll get going. Kathy Woodruff, Timmy's handsome. He is. Hey, Timmy, people are telling you you're handsome. Hey, you're handsome. Nibison, hello from Maryland. Virginia S, hi from Arkansas. Tummy Rumblings Blob. Simple's Meerkat, I think that's Christine, hi there. Corin Kolb, Baltimore, Maryland. Unsolved with Bob Smith, hi from Ontario, Canada. Dawn Pridmore, thanks for that. Pam Thompson, hi from Virginia. Dodie Redding, wow, I just read the article. It is quite an incredible article. So I'm going to be kicking off with that article, and then we're going to go in a little bit deeper. We're also going to talk about the neighbor. Someone actually left a comment not that long ago about Jackie Dobbs. We're going to talk a little bit about him. And I think where did I put the program? We're sort of going to go through 3 areas. I wonder if I have left some of my notes behind. What have I got here? Anyway, we're going to go through 3 basic areas. We're going to deal with the best possibility for the abductor. We're also going to talk about the experts that was on the interview room. And then we're also going to talk about what apologia is. But we're going to start off with Candus's backstory. Okay, so I see we are 1,000. Timmy, can you go and do your own thing? He's probably going to come back. Probably going to come back soon. Okay, so I'm going to start off with, was that a super chat from Julie? Thanks, Julie. I'm going to start off with this excellent article by Jen Beller, the staff writer for the Rogersville Review. The Rogersville Review has brought out some really excellent in-depth coverage of the Wells family. Katrina, hi from Utah, welcome. And I'm not going to read the whole article, I'm just going to refer to sections of it. And this is something, I don't know whether this was a previous interview Candus gave the Rogersville Review and that they're just sort of referring to that now, or whether it's a subsequent interview. If you notice, the media has been quite silent of late. There hasn't really been much in the media. There's been a lot on social media, but not really much in the media, with the exception of this article. And so Candus actually provided details of her backstory that I haven't seen before, and I think are quite interesting. We're going to go into that now. So Candus told them that she was born in Corpus Christi, Texas. So that's where she's actually from. You often see her wearing a cap, and I think you see the Texas flag coming up on the social media all the time. So that is going to be part of her identity, where she's from. That's quite important. When we talk about backstory, we're trying to talk about identity. We're trying to talk about who are these people really? And identity is one of the major ways you can say to profile someone or to determine their psychology, and it also goes into criminal psychology. So where you're from is quite primary in that respect. So she says, I was born in Corpus Christi, Texas, and the only reason I ended up raised in Wisconsin was because I was born with a hole between my heart in the 4 chambers, and they flew me up to Minnesota. That's what Candus said. So Candus was basically born with a heart problem. That's something I guess one can look into as well. What could have been the cause of that unusual, let's say, heart defect or heart problem? Is that just a random event, or was it linked to something else, right? But I think what is important is she's from Texas, so that's how she would identify. And I think she does have a bit of a Texas spirit about her. She's quite strong in her personality, right? And I think if you had to meet her for the first time, it's quite she seems to be quite a strong person, but in a way that's quite charming. Do you get what I mean? She was raised in Wisconsin because of this hole in her heart, or between her heart and the 4 chambers. So she was raised in Wisconsin, right? And so we get an idea, at least that part, where certainly she was. Now, I just want to mention this, and I'm sure it's on your mind, but let's just put it out there. Her younger sister, Rosemary Bly, disappeared from St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin, and Cushing. I think it's between that 5-mile distance between St. Croix Falls and Cushing in Wisconsin. And according to Candus, she was moving at the time. So at the time that, hi Vicky, at the time that Rosemary Bly disappeared, Candus was moving. according to what she said on the Sermon on the Mount. But Rosemary Bly disappeared on the 21st of August 2009. And so now we go through the rest of her backstory. She says, that's why all our family ended up residing up there. But my mom is from Wisconsin, so obviously Candy. And then this is what Candus said. She said, I left there when I was like 19. I jumped on the carnival in Pine City, Minnesota, right across the river, right? So that's factual. That's basically saying she was 19 years old when she left town, right? Did she ever come back? I also think it's quite interesting that she jumps onto the carnival. You know, it's kind of associated, certainly in my mind, with, you know, Pinocchio going to I think that Pleasure Island. You know all about that. So it's kind of associated with fun and festivity and all that kind of thing. And that is kind of the impression we get a little bit with Candus, is she's someone who likes to have fun. She's someone who has fun quite often, right? She was having fun on June the 15th, right? She goes on to say, I was on the carnival circuit for a long bit. So she doesn't say exactly how long she was on it. I wonder whether there are any people on that carnival circuit that can talk to us. But she says, I've been to different states. My mom was managing a hotel in Arkansas when I ended up in St. Louis and I got stranded there. So she came and got me and moved, and I moved to Arkansas with her. So there's already a precedent in a sense for mom and daughter looking out for one another, right? Let me just acknowledge the super chat from Canada. Grandma Green, thanks for all the hard work. Thanks, Grandma. Okay, and so that kind of provides a precedent. Timmy, come. Do you want attention? Come. I think she wants me out of this chair and playing with him. Okay, so he says, okay, come. He had a really good walk, so I don't know why he's got that sort of abandonment syndrome. Okay, so what I'm trying to get at is this thing where Candus, she says she got stranded, right? Now, how? What did that involve? Did she run out of money? Did someone betray her? Did she run into some kind of trouble? How did she get stranded? Well, she got stranded in such a way that her mother had to kind of somehow come bail her out or come and, I guess, fetch her, right? And so, again, you get a sense of mother and daughter, I don't want to say partners in crime, but sort of looking out for one another, right? But it would be good to know why she was stranded there and exactly when that happened. And then she moved to Arkansas with her mother. So this was Candus moving with her mother, right? So she left home quite young, according to 19, but now she's back in Arkansas with her mother. Then she says, and then I met Donnie's other family, his stepdaughters, and then I met him through his stepdaughters. Then we just got together, right? So I think also that's quite interesting, is that in a weird way, Candus meets Donnie sort of through her mother, if that makes sense. She meets Donnie or Don through his stepdaughters, but via going to Arkansas with her mother, right? So all of this sort of fabric goes back quite a long distance, right? She doesn't really identify which stepdaughter. She also groups them together saying stepdaughters. She doesn't also say, the first time I saw Don, he was doing this or that. Any specifics there, just that a sort of vague that she met Don through his stepdaughters, right? And then she says, we just got together. It would be interesting to know how long they were together and what was the substance of their relationship. And then they had their first child. Candus and Don had their first child together in Arkansas, right? So I think that's also quite important to establish, is they they had their first little boy before moving to the home in Tennessee. I'm just trying to think whether it's Don Wells Jr. It probably isn't. Hey? Kathy Crime Fighter, thanks a lot. I think that's kind of maybe the next step is we actually need to draw up a plan, kind of a genealogical map in the same way we did with the Laurie Vallow case, because it is getting quite complicated. There are step siblings and, it's actually quite a complicated thing, who is Macbeth's father, who is his mother and girlfriend and all that kind of thing. We kind of got to draw a map of all the people kind of in the story, a kind of a infographic, right? Just so that we've got clarity of how everyone fits together. So she says he was actually 9 months old, meaning the youngest child, when we moved up here, meaning to Ben Hill Road, and he'll be 13 in September. So they've essentially been in, now just follow my thinking here. They've essentially been in Ben Hill Road for a little bit less than 12 years, right? So just think about this. They have their first child together in Arkansas, and then she says he was 9 months old when we moved up here, and he'll be 13 in September, meaning that they've essentially been at that property for about 12 years. Does that make sense? Now, what else happened 12 years ago in August or September? And so that corresponds, this permanent move from wherever she was to Ben Hill Road basically happened 12 years ago. They moved once and they've stayed where they are ever since. Are you guys following what I'm saying? The disappearance of Rosemary Bly happened 12 years ago at the same time that Candus left, at exactly the same time, right? Did Candus go back? Did Candus go back to, when her sister disappeared, did Candus go back and, look for her? Or did she stay in Tennessee? Did Candus kind of come around and pay her respects, or, did she stay in Tennessee? So she goes on to say in the article, this was originally his mom's, meaning the Ben Hill Road property. And this part is pretty interesting. She says, it's an 11-acre property. She said, now listen to this. Actually, I took care of her, meaning Don's mother, while he went to work. So while Don was away, Candus looked after his mother who wasn't doing very well. And bear in mind, they eventually got that house, right? She had MRSA. I should actually know what that is. Let me just make sure. It's methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. It's a kind of a staph infection. So, that's also something to research, I guess, in more detail, is that particular disease. Anyway, she says MRSA is some kind of disease. So Don's mother's got this sort of disease, and Candus is taking care of her in that home. And she says, I guess everybody has a little bit of MRSA in their bodies, but some people, it just overtakes their system. This is what she told the Rogersville Review. And then she said, after so many antibiotics, the antibiotics don't help no more because it's so gone. I guess what she means is it builds up a resistance. So there's quite a lot to unpack here. What I really want to do is just draw your attention to the story, some of the details, some of the physical afflictions, and one can find out, what are the circumstances around that, not necessarily with these people, but generally. How do these afflictions generally come about? The other thing that I think is really interesting is that Don's mother was a Mormon, right? And I don't know if you guys heard in one of the early interviews, Don said, what did he say? I think he said something about Mormons are morons or something like that. We called Utah the moron state, which I think is quite a oddly disrespectful thing to say about his own mother. I mean, he's quite a faithful fellow. Apparently, he's apparently quite a faithful fellow, but he doesn't have a problem dissing someone of a slightly different faith or a different faith, right? So these are Candus's words. Because she was a Mormon, they believed in different beliefs and stuff, so they took her out of here. Her dad was a Mormon too. She was dying. She was pretty much on her deathbed, and she goes, well, one's coming into the world. She was talking about her second son at the time, and one's going out of the world. So it's quite a weird way that they're thinking about, it's literally a parent who's dying and then a child replacing that parent. It's just quite an interesting transactionality that's actually being acknowledged here. But I do think what is quite interesting is there was sort of death in that house in terms of this old lady dying, and then Don inherited the house. Besides that, I don't quite understand, because she says, because she was a Mormon, they took her out of here. I don't know if it means the Mormons came and took her away. I don't know what that means. So there's quite a lot of this with Candus and Don. They say things, but you're not quite sure what they mean. And I guess if you had to ask them, I don't know if they would want to answer it. They wouldn't want to give details, because then you'd probably have another question. But it would be interesting to know, does that mean that the Mormons came and took her away? Why did she actually have to, in, I guess, her last days, why did she have to leave? The other thing that's interesting is her dad. Her dad was a Mormon too. So that's Don's grandfather. Don's grandfather was Mormon too. So one wonders whether he just didn't really like that belief system, and he preferred the Seventh-day Adventist belief system. But it is interesting that also at the time of Rosemary's disappearance, a little bit later on, Don's mother was sick. And so I think that's quite an interesting part of the backstory. She says here, she was pretty much saying she was on her way out and he was on his way in, meaning that she was going to be leaving the world and this little baby was going to be coming into the world. And then she says that's how it happened, meaning when the little boy was born, well, Don's mother died. Then the article goes on to say Wells and Bly later had one more son and then their daughter Summer. By the way, I just want to say this. I'm not sure if I'm preaching to the converted, but I put up a video the other day where people went nuts and they were saying, well, you misled us. You made it seem as though Summer's being found. And I said something like Wells was hiding or something like that. And has Summer ever been referred to as Wells by anybody? I've never referred to Summer as Wells. Has anybody referred to Summer as Wells? And so I got a lot of accusations from people. You clickbaited me and it's terrible and I feel misled and I'm unsubscribing. But jeepers, people, use your intelligence. Wells refers, like in this article, Wells refers to Don Wells. And here's a sentence in the Rogersville Review where the sentence goes, Wells and Bly later had one more son and then their daughter Summer. Who do you think Wells refers to? It refers to Don Wells. Who do you think Bly refers to? It refers to Candus. So I don't know, guys, you must just, I don't know, that's why I also I've set this, the chat in this to subscribers only. I mean, the people who know me know how I think and how I operate, but really, that's just pretty crazy. And it's also in inverted commas, but anyway, I think those who are so appalled by it aren't here anyway, so it's probably pointless even talking about it. So it goes on, this really good article in the Rogersville Review goes on to say, now the Wells are left to wonder if they will be sending any of their 4 children off to school when Hawkins County schools begin on August the 9th. Now, I just find this really interesting, that August the 9th is when this particular county is going back to school. Well, that was also an issue in the Chris Watts case. Chris Watts didn't want to send his children back to school. I think this is really important to point out. Chris Watts, one of the first things he did after burying his children was he called the school and he said, they're not going to school. And it was around about the same time. It was August the 13th, which was a Monday. And they were in a very, They were in a very expensive school. And what was it? $500 a week, $250 per child, or something like that. And so, so one wonders whether that was coming into play here. To be honest with you, let me tell you up front, I don't know whether it was. But the fact is, when children need to go to school, they need clothing, and expenses go up. And it's kind of, it can be a headache. It's another child that must go somewhere, and one child's going to that school and one child's going to that school. It can become more expensive. Absolutely. Daycare is more expensive. So was that a factor here, right? And again, you could say, was the sort of, going to school something that was related to an abduction or something else? I think a good way to sort of address the school narrative is the date that someone went missing. She went missing June the 15th. To me, it's too far away to be relevant, but I think it's still worth thinking about, because bear in mind, on the Sermon on the Mount, Candus said, I'd registered for school and I'd done everything, and I think she'd spoken about buying a uniform, and we're going to get to that in a second. So that was definitely on their minds. I think if you have less money, I think you're more conscious of things like schooling than if you've got more money. So I think August the 9th is quite interesting. I mean, we're not even there yet. And I mean, the Welsh children have now been taken away. But there's another quote from the Rogersville Review. This is a quote from what Candus says. She says, I was hoping someone was going to get to go to that school for her first year. And I think, not quite sure which school she's referring to. Oh, she's talking about Kepler Elementary. So let me just repeat that. Candus said, I was hoping Summer was going to get to go to that school for her first year, meaning Kepler Elementary. And that's the school her boys attended until it closed for good, along with McFeeters Bend Elementary at the end of the 2020-2021 school year. I love that school. They were all so nice to the kids and me. I think I just need to get to Donald Duck. Well, you've made 2 chats here. Someone said, yeah, ex-Mormon here, and I have no idea what that means. I left the Mormon church because I was being verbally, physically, emotionally, and mentally abused. Okay, sorry to hear that. My bishop called me a liar. He told me, my stepdad. Yeah, look, I think the church covering things up is something that is almost a cliche, but I think one's got to be careful about making generalizations. I don't think the church is covering up here, but I also don't think that they're trying very hard to find out what's going on, if that makes sense. Thanks for that, Donald Duck. So to go back to the article, I don't really know what it means closed for good. I mean, does it mean it's shuttered, it's not never going to open again, or that it closed for the holidays? I kind of get the sense that it's defunct, right? But I think this is quite interesting, is this idea that the school that Candus wanted to send Summer to, maybe she couldn't have, and that was maybe going to create problems. I don't know. And then the article goes on to say, the two schools were not only Hawkins County's two smallest and two oldest, they were the two closest to the Wells Beach Creek home. Now, this is such a great point, and thanks again to the Rogersville Review for this insight, is they are talking about something that we wouldn't know. I certainly wouldn't have known, meaning that, you know, these schools, these schools that the children would be attending are the smallest, the oldest, and the closest to the Wells home. And think about what would be really important for this family that is maybe struggling financially and you know, don't have the sort of resources that they would want. Well, what happens if a school in this rural area is much further afield? Well, you're going to have less time, you're going to spend more, it's going to be kind of just a difficulty, it's going to be a problem. Does that make sense? That psychology could be in the mindset, right? Again, I'm not convinced that it is because of the timing, but I think it's interesting and I think it's relevant. The question is how relevant. Now listen to this, and this blew my ears off temporarily off my head when I read it. And it relates to the last photo, okay? So this is again a quote from the Rogersville Review. I'll put a link to the article in the description. It's not there right now. I did put a link right at the top of the chat, but I'll put a link to it in the description when I'm finished. But you guys can Google it as well. The article is called Wells' Nightmare Worsens as Boy is Removed, and it's dated, well, it says here 27 minutes ago, but I think it came out fairly recently. Can't quite see the date here. I don't know if it was published today, but it certainly came out online quite recently. I don't know if the Rogersville, it was published Friday, July 30th. So it did come out today. Okay, so that's what the article is titled, Wells' Nightmare Worsens as Boy is Removed, from the Rogersville Review by Jim Bella. Great article, Jim. And so he goes on to say, with the closing of Kepler, so it is a permanent closing, the two older boys were to move to Hawkins Elementary. Now that's something you can look at on a map. You can say, okay, here is that small little old school that's now closed. Where's Hawkins Elementary? Oh, it's over there. Well, what is the exact distance we're talking about? What is the exact changing in circumstances for this family, right? And then the two youngest Wells children, that Summer and her one little brother, they would be attending Joseph Rogers Primary. And then one can compare that to, I think, McFeeters Bend Elementary and see how far is McFeeters Bend Elementary from Joseph Rogers. And then again get a sense. Bear in mind, it's a double closing of schools. Two schools closing, that's quite a double whammy, you know, if you're in this rural area. And one wonders, is that why Candus got her new vehicle? That's something I'd also really like to know about, is the vehicle narrative. When was it bought? How was it bought? I mean, if they don't have any money, if they're struggling so much, how on earth could they afford a new car like that? I mean, I've actually, this week that's just gone by, I've kind of been negotiating to purchase a vehicle. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how True Crime Rocket Science works in the real world, right? But, you know, I sort of wonder, what's the story behind that vehicle? She said Don gave it to her. Where did the money come for that vehicle? Just from hard work? Also, why is Candus driving her mother's vehicle when she's got this wonderful other vehicle? I mean, I think it was quite interesting how Candus drove to the swimming hole in her own vehicle, but that's not what happened on June 15th. So why wasn't she driving her own vehicle on June 15th? That I think is also an interesting question. I would like to know, you know, why weren't you driving the vehicle? Didn't it have gas? Did it have a flat tire? Did grandma say, let's go in my vehicle? Was grandma driving at any point with a bad knee? What's the story? Someone says maybe they're leasing the car. Are they? Are they leasing the car? I know a car lease is part of the narrative in the Letitia Store case, but the thing is, Candus posted a picture of herself, a selfie of herself, I think wearing red with a car behind her, and it seemed like she's saying it's my vehicle, and they've still got the vehicle. So what's the story? Let's just have a look at that super chat. Not sure if there was a question there. 12-Step Woman, thank you, Bunches, for providing us with more live streams. Thanks for that. Thank you. Okay, so let's just have a look here. So yeah, this is the part that stood out to me. The article goes on to say, Summer already had an outfit picked out for her first day of school. Think about this. It's June, early June, going up to the middle of June, right? And apparently Summer's already got her outfit picked for her first day. Is that likely? I think it could be. I think it's definitely possible. Thanks, Lauren. But the other thing is, it is quite a long way from school. But here's the kicker. The outfit that Summer had picked out for school was the one that we see her wearing in the last photo. So in a weird way, she's wearing a school uniform in the last photo. And there's something about that seems to make the whole narrative a bit more relevant, doesn't it? I don't know, when I looked at the outfit she was wearing, I thought it looks kind of odd. It's not like the sort of thing that a kid would wear, that you'd see a kid wearing. And I mean, all of us sort of noted that it's sort of got long sleeves and long pants, but that was what she was wearing on the day, on the last day that she was seen. And it's possible, I don't know, it's possible that if we ever find Summer in whatever state or wherever, whatever the circumstances or whatever the situation, she might be in those same clothing, which were supposed to be school clothes. And one also wonders, when Candus went to buy that outfit, did she was it like a realization, wow, this is going to be expensive? Was that part of the fabric? It could have been, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it's something we need to go into. As I say, there's an incredible article with some details that I certainly haven't seen before. So Summer had picked out an outfit for her first day of school. It's the one we all know as the one that she's wearing in the last known image of her, the last photo, where she's lying against 2 gallons of milk in the back seat of her grandmother's pickup truck after the swim. That's in this article of the Rogersville Review. That is identifying the clothing that she's wearing, right? And so this is another quote from the Rogersville Review of what Candus says, right? She said, "The only outfit that I had was a brand new one we got for her to go to kindergarten. It was a suit, of course, pants and a sweater. I got it probably about a week before. It was still in Mom's truck. It was the only change of clothes because we did not plan to go swimming that day." End quote. And that's something she's emphasized over and over again. We didn't plan to go swimming that day. We did not plan to go swimming that day. And yet there's I'd love to play it right now. I'd like to play it and that's the best way to do it. You have a statement in black and white, and then you hear the audio where she says, "I changed Summer into a bathing suit at my home because it was so hot." And this was before 8 o'clock in the morning. And I think that's what she said to Chris McDonough, right? That it was like a hot day, and so she changed Summer into a bathing suit because she was going to be hot, and the bathing suit's not hot. right? And so, I don't know, was she dressed in a bathing suit all day? If that's true, then I do tend to believe that the bathing suit was actually that summer dress and it's not a bathing suit. But you could sort of argue that it sort of looks a bit like those bathing suits for very little children when it's in the water, except is it really a bathing suit? Someone said maybe she bought the car with stimulus money. That's an interesting point. I think another really interesting theme to talk about, it's kind of early in the game to be doing so, and it is a game, it's become a game. I don't like it to be a game, but that's exactly what it's become. Is the coronavirus, what impact could coronavirus have had on that community? Right, that I think is a good theme to discuss. And you can say, well, it could have changed the fates and fortunes of a lot of people. A lot of people simultaneously in certain jobs in that area could have become unemployed. Did they? People in that area might know this. What kind of people were they? Were they people like the Wells family? And then what did people like the Wells family do when they became unemployed? What do they do in lieu of, well, our kids have got to go to school, we've got to pay the bills? What did they do in order to deal with this new dispensation, right? Now, Raymond Schramm, thanks a lot. Just see what you said there. We seem to be of one mind. Okay. I don't want to go stray too far from the Summer Wells case, but the coronavirus also, I think, played a role to some extent in the Laurie Vallow case. So you can imagine, to some extent, although it came into it a little bit late, you can imagine Laurie Vallow thinking, the pandemic, yes, the world is ending. Yes, it is doomsday. Hooray, the world's ending, I'm going to become whatever. And so coronavirus, I think, is going to be playing a role in some background aspect in some of the cases we're dealing with right now, right? One wonders if it played a role in the Barry Morphew case, right? It's definitely something we've got to factor into in our sort of programming, right? So I'm just going to go back to this. So she talks about we did not plan to go swimming that day. Oh, I thought it was such a hot day. And so one story was that she put on the bathing suit at her own home before 8 a.m. How would you know it would be hot by then? Maybe you could say you would know, but that day wasn't a particularly hot day compared to the other days. The other thing is, I think she told, I'm just trying to think, I think it was Macbeth said that he actually saw Candus go into his home and change Summer into a bathing suit. I'm just wondering whether Summer was actually in a bathing suit. Regardless of Macbeth saying that she was changed into one and Candus saying that, I wonder whether she actually was in a bathing suit at all. And I do think it's interesting that she needed a change of clothing afterwards, and so that is what she put on. I'm sorry if I'm missing some of your comments. I do want to get to them, but I also want to get through this article. I mean, it's already 45 minutes, and there's other stuff I want to get through. So going through the rest of the article, she said, I figured we'll just change her out and put her in these. That way she'll be warm. She won't freeze to death on the way home. Again, something that just, if you know statement analysis, if you're sensitive to semantics, as I am as a writer, a statement like that, it sort of leaves you cold. Let me read it again. She said, I just figured we'll change her out and put her in these, meaning the school outfit. That way she'll be warm. She won't freeze to death on the way home, right? let me just, Brenda Redmond, everyone, including every dog and cat and rat. Yeah, that's certainly something that you sort of feel like that place needs one giant spring clean. But she's talking about summer freezing to death. I thought it was a baking hot day. I thought it was a very hot day. So why is there this inconsistency? I mean, why is she in a long sleeve tracksuit or long sleeve outfit with long trousers? But I mean, it was so hot that you wanted to go swimming, right? And then you say, well, it wasn't really that hot that day. It was 26 degrees. Then no, but the humidity made it really hot. Oh, okay. Was it hot or was it cold? Simple question. Was it hot or was it cold? And I've said this before, summer doesn't look hot in that last photo. It's like where I am right now isn't hot. And I can tell you, if it was, my face would be flushed because I'd be sitting here with a beanie on and a long sleeve shirt and a shirt under the shirt, right? And I'd be getting hot, but it's cold, so I'm not flushed. And summer isn't flushed. But it is possible that summer was cold if she'd lost consciousness, if something had happened, if she'd knocked herself, if she bumped her head, if she had concussion, right? Someone said it was hot. My my position on it. So there's some people saying it was hot. It was baking hot. It was so hot that it was life-threatening. If you closed the door, someone could lose their life. In that sense, right? That's the one position. The other position is it was cold, and she's saying here so that she won't freeze to death on the way home. Those are her words. That way she'll be warm. She won't freeze to death on the way home. So is it hot or cold? And my personal feeling is neither. It was sort of mild, warm. It wasn't hot or cold. It was sort of in between. But either way, you can kind of make a claim. That's why I put that on, or that's why I took that off. That's why that happened. That's why that happened. Yeah, as Stephanie says, the temperature doesn't matter. The temperature only matters because no one can agree what it was, like so many other things, like the timeline. Let me just see. Daphne, she said earlier in the interview that she dressed her in the swimsuit because it was hot that day and she gets hot. Then all of a sudden summer gets too cold and she's leaning against the cold milk. Doesn't compute. And I really like your thinking there, Daphne. I mean, that's just sensible thinking where you say, oh, so she's cold, right? In the narrative. The narrative is she's cold. And so you're dressing her warmly. And so she's now going to lie with her head on cold milk. Oh, yeah, that does make sense. She's going to lie and fall asleep with her head on cold milk. Really? No, not really. Not really. And I just want to say, when you say, let's talk about the abduction narrative instead, let's focus on that. What do you end up with? What do you end up talking about? You end up not really talking about summer. You end up not really talking about Candus. You end up talking about basically nothing. You end up talking about, I don't know, could it be this, could it be that? And it doesn't really go anywhere. It sort of swirls into nowhere. But no, that's what we think it is. And I put up a poll on this site, on this channel, asking you guys to vote on that. And at 3,000 votes, it was something like 80-20. At 4,000 votes, it was still 80-20. And at 5,000 votes, which is where we are now, I think it's still 81% voting no abduction, and 19% voting abduction. So by far the majority don't aren't taking that seriously. So why are we talking about it? Why 45 days later are we talking about an abduction being possible, probable, or likely, or whatever? I mean, has a suspect even been identified? Anybody? Has anybody even been like, okay, so there's an abduction. Okay, so who did it? Is there any evidence of an abductor? Like any evidence? Somebody screamed, some of their footprints. I think I saw something. The boys saw something. There's been someone lurking around here, and his name is this. And let's look into that person. We're going to talk about Jackie Dobbs, but let me just say this. At the end of the conversation, the answer is it's not Jackie Dobbs. And we can talk about Jackie Dobbs, like, okay, so he's someone that we need to talk about, he's the nearest neighbor, but the end of that conversation is, okay, it's not him. And I don't want to have those conversations for the next 6 months. I don't have those conversations of, could it be this person? How about that one? Well, maybe this one, which is what has been happening in the John Benet Ramsey case and the Madeleine McCann case for 25 years and 14 years respectively. I think we're a bit more sophisticated as the true crime community than that, don't you? And if you think about it, the McCann case and the Ramsey case, well, the parents couldn't be suspects because they were too well-to-do. They were too wealthy to be suspects. They were too wealthy and too rich and intelligent to have done something like that. But now the Wells couple are too poor to be suspects. So which is it? Are you too rich to be a suspect or too poor? Because in both cases, we're talking about, no, it's an abduction. So anyway, I'm just going to finish up with this article. So I do think those words are critical. She didn't just say that, we put the clothing on summer so she wouldn't be cold. It is that way she'll be warm. She won't freeze to death on the way home. She won't freeze to death on the way home. And I can tell you now, my hypothesis, I know some of you agree with this, is that Summer never made it home. Summer never planted flowers. Summer never went into the house and the boys were there. None of that happened. Something happened to Summer at the swimming hole, and then on the way, they were supposed to go home. On the way home, Summer was taken somewhere else. Then the article goes on to say the impact of Summer's disappearance has been felt by many people, including Summer's uncle Bob. Have you guys heard of that? Have you guys heard of him? Summer's got an uncle called Bob, and that is Grandma Candy's brother-in-law. So we haven't really heard much from Bob. Maybe we will at some point. I think Summer used to call him Uncle Booby, and that's according to the article. She couldn't say Bob, according to Candus, so she called him Booby. And so this is a quote from from Candus in the Rogersville Review, sort of near the end of the article. She says, thanks, yeah, I agree, Raymond. Thanks, Raymond. Candus says, quote, the day he found out Summer went missing, he had to go into the hospital because he had a heart attack. I must say, I've spoken about sympathy, that I don't really have much sympathy for what is going on at that home. I must say that leaves me feeling very compassionate. You just feel like, wow, some people in this family may not be completely innocent, but jeepers, cut these people a break. This guy has a heart attack on the day Summer goes missing. That's not that's grim. That's definitely grim. And so that's where Bob has been. That's why we haven't heard from him. And so you can imagine all of this is pressing on the family members, right? And this is also something I didn't know. I don't know if you guys knew. Grandma left Tennessee on July 18th. So Grandma is gone. Grandma left 3 days after Summer disappeared. Grandma out of town. And we haven't heard from Grandma on social media. We haven't heard anything. Are we going to? And so the story here is that Grandma is with her sister Linda, whose husband Bob is hospitalized. So that's why we haven't heard from Grandma. She's sort of at Bob's bedside, but she's been at his bedside since July 18th. It's now, sorry, hang on, I got that wrong. I said she left 3 days later. It's actually a month and 3 days later. Sorry about that. She left a month and 3 days later. But it's still, you know, we haven't heard from Grandma. I don't know whether there's more I want to say about that. Probably might seem a bit insensitive, but so that's where Grandma is. I think what I am going to say is just that Grandma's gone to Linda because Bob has been hospitalized. Now, I just have a question, and it may seem unkind. And the question is, when Rosemary disappeared, so, you know, an emergency is when someone's hospitalized with a heart attack. What about when someone disappears? Is that an emergency? And I just wonder whether Candus went to Wisconsin when Rosemary disappeared. Did she show up and say, you know, what's going on? Are you guys looking for my sister? What's going on? Did she call the police, or did the police call her? One just wonders whether all that information is available. Okay, and then this is the very end of the article. She talks about a pacemaker and him quitting smoking, and he's on oxygen, and so on and so on and so on. I'm not really going to go into that. But it is mentioned here that Grandma splits time between Tennessee and Wisconsin. So Grandma's going from Tennessee to Wisconsin back anyway, because she's got relatives there. Why isn't Candus, or is Candus also going back to Wisconsin? It just would be interesting to know. You know, your sister disappeared from, thanks Heather, from Wisconsin. Are you going back to Wisconsin every now and then? Because you've got other relatives there, or not really? Is Grandma going, but not you? But otherwise you and Grandma sort of do things regularly. What we just want to know what those family dynamics are. And then the last paragraph refers to Grandma and her backstory a little bit. It just says, quote, she's been down here off and on for about 4 years. So Grandma's been staying there for 4 years. She goes back up north because she's got grandkids up there. So 6 months, 9 months, she goes back. She leaves her camper here. She wasn't supposed to leave actually until September, but she had to go up there and help her. Her doctor's appointment is up there in October. Right after her doctor's appointment, she'll be back. So according to Candus, Grandma will be back around about October. So maybe we'll get to hear from Grandma then. Who knows? But just once again, an excellent article by the Rogersville Review. I don't know about you guys, but I was sort of blown away by it. There's quite a lot in it. Even singularly, some of the revelations there I found pretty, like it just knits things together. And there are multiple revelations in so many areas. I thought that's really interesting. I think are we ready to go into the next area? I think I'm going to take some of your questions. Oh, so here's my list. So today we're going to go into the backstory, which we've done. Next, we're going to deal with the apologia, which we're going to do in a moment. And then true crime, rocket science in everyday life. And some of you might think, well, that's not Summer Wells. I'm not going to stick around for that. You might find it quite interesting, maybe even entertaining. So I put a quote in the title of this live: "To think of shadows is a serious thing." I think that's a quote from, is it Victor Hugo or Viktor Frankl? I don't actually even know. What did I say here? Victor Hugo. And that's actually a quote that I used in my book, Doubt, on the Madeleine McCann case. I must say, narrating that book while I'm doing this case really keeps my mind sharp and keeps my mind thinking in certain areas. Now, when we talk about apologia, do some of you know what I'm talking about? Like, I'm sure those of you who've read my books know what I'm talking about when I refer to apologia. But do you guys know what apologia is? Stephanie, do you know what apologia is? A couple of you say no. So, okay, if you know what apologia is, put up a 1. If you don't, put up a 2. Let's have a look. It's good to see some yeses. Pauline Buckle says yes. Okay, so apologia is basically when you provide a sympathetic narrative to someone that sort of supports their cause, right? And a person who does that is an apologist, right? So, and I guess apology is also in the eye of the beholder. So one person's apologetic is another person's saint or savior or soldier for justice kind of thing. So I'll give an example. In the John Benet Ramsey case, Lou Smith is an apologist for the Ramsey cause, meaning Lou Smith is someone who supports the Ramseys, he supports the intruder theory, he's on their side, he almost sort of apologizes for what everyone else is doing and says, you know what, you guys shouldn't be treated this way. Oh, you know what? I'm so ashamed of the police department. You should never be suspects. You know what? Blah 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 blah. Right. So Lou Smith is an apologist in the Ramsey case, in my opinion. There are other people who say he was a fantastic detective and blah 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 blah. In the McCann case, Jim Gamble is an apologist for the McCanns, where he will defend them no matter what, and so on and so on and so on. And you'll get an apologist in wherever you have sort of a case where no one got prosecuted and people are wanting justice, but nothing really happens. Someone comes out in support of that person, and that person is an apologist, right? Now, you could either say, well, they're an apologist, and they should be, right? So you might say, I'm totally am on board with that. But you might also be someone else saying, you know what, this person doesn't know what he's talking about, right? And so that seems to be happening in the Summer Wells case, where the coverage of the interview room is now actually being used by the Summer Wells, not sure who it is exactly, but let's say the Summer Wells family on the Find Summer Wells website. They're actually using Chris McDonough's coverage of them. It's quite sympathetic to them non-judgmental of them. They're actually using it to promote their innocence and to promote their story on the Find Summer Wells website. And so what I'm saying is, at this point, and if I'm wrong and if I'm out of line, maybe Chris McDonough can say that. Maybe he can say, I'm not an apologist. Or maybe he can say something like, you know what, we don't know what's happening, or it's too early to whatever. But I think you've kind of got to, you can't play it both ways. I think you've kind of got to say, either I think an abduction legitimately took place here, right? And I'm going to be kind of cheerleading the abduction narrative for the next foreseeable future. And I'm going to be talking to the Wells couple, and I'm going to be sympathetic towards them and encouraging people to be sympathetic towards them and all that kind of thing. Or I'm going to be whatever the alternative is. I'm going to be investigating the alternative, right? I don't think you can play it both ways. I don't think you can say, you know what, we have got no idea what's going on here, and let's leave it to law enforcement. It's 45 days in. It's 45 days in. I made a video, I'm not quite sure when, but very early on, where I said, this is not an abduction. And I provided 5 very simple points, right? And in the fullness of time, I could be proved wrong. In the fullness of time, who knows, something, I almost made a joke, but it's not something to make light of. I could be wrong. I mean, we on this side of time, we're not looking at this case in hindsight. In that way, it's totally different to the Ramsey case, the McCann case, the Gannon Store case. Right now, we are moving with the timeline, with history, without knowing what the outcome is, right? And I think the difference is, at this point of not knowing, have you got quite a good idea based on what you already know or not? Or do you still have no idea what is going on? You've kind of got to go, you know what, anything could be on the table. All possibilities are possible. And I would say you actually need to start narrowing your focus at some point. And I think we passed that point a long time ago. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I didn't watch the interview rooms live yesterday with the FBI experts, certainly not from beginning to end. I caught scraps of it. But there was somewhere, because I was also watching the Olympics, but there was somewhere when I was watching it where I thought there are 12,000 people. I don't know how many of them are from my channel, but I would imagine it could easily be 10,000 or 5,000 of you. I don't know, we can maybe do a poll in a moment. How many of those from my channel were watching the interview room? And disagreeing with what's there, meaning 80% don't think that the abduction theory is legitimate. So why are we talking about it? And I think I know the answer is because it's apologia. And so, where apologia got us in the John Benet Ramsey case is the case never went to trial. There's no conclusion to the John Benet Ramsey case, right? And you had someone like Lou Smith involved in that case. And here we have an example of a case that has never been resolved, never went to trial. One of the most famous cases, and it's still what happened to John Benet Ramsey. It's like a cliche, right? And as far as I know, Chris McDonough is or was friends with Lou Smith, and he was also I don't know, he keeps talking about, what's his name? John Douglas. He keeps sort of name dropping these expert FBI guys, right? So can you see me here? Do you see any experts around me, right? Do you see any experts that I've kind of got with me here that are also going to be talking about the abduction theory? Did you see any experts like sitting with me here? I don't see any, right? So I don't kind of have a bunch of experts that are now going to reinforce my story. It's just me. But I can tell you that I've written about 10 books on the John Benet Ramsey case. I've written about 5 books on the Madeleine McCann case. I've written about Gannon Stork. I've covered the Barry Morphew case on YouTube. I've covered the Nora Corrin case, where another little girl went missing. And I can tell you one thing, I'm sick and tired of apologia. I'm sick and tired of people who come along, and I don't really know whether they actually don't know, in other words, whether they are sincerely saying, you know what, I really don't know what happened here, but I don't think it's this, or I really don't know whether it's that, or that it's actually a game that's been played. But I would hate it if it turns out that it is a game, because this is a little girl that's missing, and are we being toyed with? Are we the true crime community that's being toyed with? Where, the moment that you go onto the property, the dogs bark, and you don't say, well, how can you have an abduction with that? And on and on and on. And you say, we're not going to look at the mess in the house. We're not going to look at previous criminal records. We're going to not look at any of that stuff. We're just going to be blind to that. And let's just focus, let's fixate on the other side of what this is. Right? And there's another channel on YouTube, and I think you know who I'm talking about, who's an apologist for Chris Watts. Right? It's somebody who basically was on Chris Watts' side and was trying to help him get a 35C. And, it's basically someone who killed his family. This channel is now taking it upon themselves to try and defend this person, right? And that is why I really don't have time for apologists. They waste time, right? They waste time. They confuse the public, and I don't know, it's just, it's certainly the bane of my existence. People who, you make a video sympathetic to people, and then suddenly everyone changes their minds. And so maybe you succeeded in that, but is that authentically what true crime needs to be? Should we all be emotional? Should we cry in the middle of our investigation? And then this is true crime where a person disappeared. We're trying to solve the case. We're trying to find who is responsible. It's not an emotional thing. The thing that happened is certainly something that touches our heartstrings, but the way you solve it isn't through emotion. It's through detective work. It's through facts, evidence, profiling, criminal psychology, evidence, intertextuality, looking at other cases, looking at what we know, looking at the texture of this case, we've got a timeline that doesn't make sense, got big holes in it. Someone who doesn't want to talk about the timeline, over and over again, doesn't want to talk about the timeline. On the day someone went missing. She could be innocent, and she could have a bad memory, but it's not a good sign. Yeah, the boys can verify the timeline. You're right about that. I want to come back to John Douglas, who Chris McDonough seems to really admire, right? He's going to Hollywood and he's got all these shows behind him. As far as I know, John Douglas was a school teacher once upon a time. By the way, I was as well. I taught in South Korea, so I was also a school teacher. But I think people have this sense that John Douglas is this legend, right? But he was once upon a time, he was a school teacher. I'm not saying he hasn't done great things, but John Douglas also supported the Ramseys. He also said almost immediately, I think you guys are innocent. And it was like in a record time, right? John Douglas also was effectively a defense witness for the West Memphis Three. John Douglas was also effectively a defense expert or someone who defended Amanda Knox. So that's the Ramseys, the West Memphis Three, and Amanda Knox, John Douglas. And you might say, yeah, I agree. John Douglas is really smart. You not. John Douglas was right about the Ramseys. John Douglas was right about the West Memphis Three. He was right about the Amanda Knox. Well, you're welcome to your opinion. I've written books about all three of those cases, have you? And so you've got an FBI agent, ex-FBI agent, whose job is to investigate criminals who ends up as a defense witness. Well, I think he was a defense witness in the West Memphis case, but he ended up being a defense expert with the Ramseys. He was hired by the Ramseys, and he was I would just say that he defended Amanda Knox, the very respected John Douglas. And there are certain cases I 100% agree with John Douglas, and I 100% think, wow, that was incredible, right? I think there's one case where he predicted the vehicle someone would be driving. And I've also watched Mindhunter, and I think it's amazing. It's amazing television. But I don't like what happened in the Ramsey case. So I'm going to say this again. The Ramseys and the McCanns are so well-to-do that they can't be guilty. And so there's no trial. So, wow, there must be a very clever abductor that he basically outsmarted everybody, even the parents who are looking for whoever did whatever to their child. The abductor got away with it. So according to John Douglas's story, thanks, Loris. According to John Douglas's story, in terms of his position, so the Ramseys are innocent. Well, that means if an abductor did this, he got away with it, right? Am I right? I don't know. Am I right or not? Right. So you kind of got a situation here where the Ramseys and the McCanns, they're innocent. So an abductor did something and they've gotten away with it despite these really wealthy people, these really clever people, but they've been outsmarted by whoever did this, because whoever did this got away with it. What do you guys think of that? And so is that the case here as well? Is that the case here, that there's also an abductor and he's outsmarting everybody? 80% of you don't seem to think so. Or are we all wrong? Are we wrong about that? Despite all their wealth and influence, the Ramseys and the McCanns, over 25 years for the Ramseys, 14 years for the McCanns, there's never been a trial. The abductor and intruder actually got away with whatever they did. And these are wealthy families, some of the most intelligent people in true crime. But the abductor outsmarted them. And the other side of it is, okay, so the parents are so well-to-do, the Ramseys and the McCanns are so well-to-do that they can't be suspects. But now in this case, is it that they can't be suspects either because they're poor? So when can you suspect somebody? Or can you just not ever suspect someone? Must you say, oh, you don't have a sheriff's badge, so you can't suspect anyone? Now, what happens if you are a person in your own life and things are starting to happen in your own life? Should you also suspend judgment until something actually happens? Should you actually suspend your own discernment and your intelligence, or have an expert come to your life and kind of do a seance or something? So I don't know if I'm being emphatic enough, but I have a real problem with apologia. It is like I see it as PR, a PR narrative. It's a false narrative. And, if you're someone who's a Christian who finds truth important, PR, that whole narrative is a false narrative. It's an intentionally spun deceit, right? And sometimes it's very intentionally done by PR people, And sometimes maybe it's done, people don't actually know what the real situation is. I don't know. But I'm sure the defense lawyers, I don't know. Okay, so let me go on to TCRS in real life. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about, okay, so just a couple of comments here. A mom on patrol with no children. That was a comment somebody left where they said, Candus is wearing a shirt saying mom on patrol. And they were sort of grimly saying, yes, she's a mom on patrol with no children. So is she a mom on patrol? Was she ever a mom on patrol? So why is she wearing that shirt? Yvonne Phillips says, I hope Chris sees this part of your life. I'm not sure if I do. But apologia doesn't get cases solved. Loris Warenko, how can the apologia be stopped? What needs to happen to change it? I think you need to call it out. I think you need to call it out and say, stop BSing us. Let's stop wasting time with could-be's and maybes and deal with what we know. Deal with real inconsistencies and red flags. And, the sense I'm getting is that it's almost like let's let time go by. Let's sort of let the clock run, right? Let's allow flexibility and sympathy, and let's just be casual about this, and let's patiently kind of go through this, right? Really. So when a missing 5-year-old is missing, must we sort of be casual. We mustn't have urgency or conviction. We must be casual, and let's consider all the possibilities. Really, is that how you find stuff and solve stuff? Not in my book. As I say, you start to narrow it down. Isn't that right? And the problem with apology is that it catches on. It repeats over and over, and then eventually it catches on. And some people are convinced. Juries can be convinced. It's just, I don't know, it's like a true crime cancer. I really don't have a problem with apologia if it's like unintentional, where you think, I genuinely believe blah, 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 but I have a problem with it where you're being manipulated, where you know better, where you actually know what is going on, and you're actually manipulating someone. I've got a problem with it. When Chris McDonough went into Candus's home and mentioned Rosemary, Candus very quickly, and I'd love to play the audio, but Candus very quickly said, I don't know, I can't say, it's difficult. And that was all she had to say on the topic. The sister that's been missing, the younger sister that's been missing for 12 years, I don't know, I can't say, it's difficult. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words. 7 words on the sister. That's it. No more said on the topic. Off the hook, bye-bye. In the timeline, not even after they put away their groceries, absolutely. Was that overlooked on purpose? Well, I think Chris actually made a good point where he said, when did they have lunch, right? What I found quite interesting with the groceries was, in the Chris Watts case, he talks about he loaded tools into his vehicle. There's also a transfer of something that's got to be carried into the vehicle, right? And in his story, it's tools. And we all know that it wasn't tools, and maybe there were a couple of tools, but there was something else that was transferred. Now, in this case, we've also got the psychology of carrying groceries. In this case, it's Candus is carrying groceries into the house. The boys are I'm not sure if the boys did, but they're carrying groceries around, right? And it just reminds me that this idea of the groceries and the tools in the Chris Watts case, my impression was that there really wasn't a lot of groceries. And that's something else you can really ask, is specifically what groceries did you buy? Can we have the receipt for those groceries? Probably they're long gone. Okay, well, what groceries did you buy? Can you give us a list? Okay, milk. What else? How much groceries can you buy in 5 minutes? The other thing that I caught, and once again, I didn't watch the whole thing yesterday. I was pretty annoyed, but I did get inspired by the Olympics. In fact, I was quite brought to tears. There were 2 South Africans who took part in the breaststroke final. I don't know if you guys watched it. The one broke the world record, and she came first, and then there was an American second, another American third. But I was like moved to tears just by how inspiring that was, right? But there was something that was brought up somewhere in the live where it was this idea that this is an abduction that happened in 7 seconds. Sorry, no, that was a reference to an abduction that happened in 7 seconds that they talked about. And so I was just thinking, so are we talking about an instant abduction here? Like you can be in a supermarket and your child is in this aisle and then someone's abducted, and that has happened. Why on earth are you talking about that when that is nothing like Ben Hill Road, where there's not safety in numbers, there's not urban fabric, there are not a lot of other different cars parking around, a lot of people running around. None of that applies. So why are we talking about it? How can you have a 7-second abduction in a rural area that takes effort to get to and to leave, and you can't do that instantly? Why are you even talking about it? I dealt with exactly this thing in the Nora Corrin case where, you had this resort, the Dusun Resort in the middle of the Malaysian jungle, and someone was saying, no, an abductor went right through this dense Malaysian jungle. It's 10 times worse than Tennessee. It's tropical jungle. It's much hotter, right? And basically got in through the window of the home, and then snatched Nora, who was upstairs sleeping beside her siblings, on a wooden staircase and a wooden platform upstairs. And that whole story is supposed to be, yes, an abductor would do that. He would break into a home where everyone was present, and he would take someone from a bed where they're sleeping with someone else right beside them, and no one's going to make a noise, and the wood's not going to creak, and they're not going to leave any leaf debris lying around. And all of those things apply here. Aren't you going to bring any leaf debris from outside inside? Aren't you going to leave any dirt or anything like that? How are you going to get there? Aren't you going to need a vehicle to get there? Well, does no one see you in the vehicle if it's not from there? You also have the same ridiculous psychology that you have in the Ramsey case, where an abductors or intruder is going to break in when the entire family are present and accounted for. On Christmas night, when a lot of families are actually awake beyond the normal waking hours, you're going to be in the home when the family is unusually together. Now, in this situation, almost everyone's present except Don. Grandma's there, all the boys are there, and Summer's there. So if you were going to abduct someone, why not just wait for her to go outside and go on a swing? Why would you go inside the house? Someone says the Walsh case wasn't 7 seconds. Okay, do you want to argue about that? Do you want to say, right? So maybe it is a good time to talk about a suspect that has been identified. I see someone did mention it. So there are 20% of you who feel like, well, this could be an abduction, right? And someone said, what about Jackie Dobbs? Let's talk about Jackie Dobbs. And maybe a week from now, we'll be talking about John Smith, and then Jack Doe, and then on and on and on. And then when do you sort of go, okay, we've interrogated 30 suspects. Okay, now it's 40. Now it's 50. Do you think we should maybe be looking in a different direction? No, here's another suspect. We can do that, and we'll get nowhere, and it'll go on and on and on. I predict, mark my words, right? We can do that. We can go through the thing like you see on the Chris Watts case, where could it be this one? How about that one? How about that one? Could it be this one involved? Based on no information, no evidence, just based on speculation, based on maybe, could be, whatever. What about what we do know? But we don't want to talk about that. So Jackie Dobbs has been interviewed by 2 FBI agents already, according to Jackie Dobbs. Jackie Dobbs is, I'm not 100% sure of this, but he looks like he could be in his mid-20s, maybe late 20s. He's got a ponytail. He moved in beside the Wells family on June the 21st, 2021. That's quite recent. In other words, he moved in there 15 days before Summer disappeared. This youngish guy. I think he stays on a 2-acre property, but he's the most direct next door neighbor, right? So he's theoretically had 2 weeks to figure out that who his neighbors are and whatever. Apparently, Jackie Dobbs was upset that someone was camping on the property. I don't know. I'm a little bit confused about this. You guys can go to, I think it's called Chasing Truth. Is that am I right about that? Chasing Truth channel. She spoke about the neighbor in that. I'm not sure whether whether Jackie Dobbs was referring to Candy as the person camping. I'm not sure if, because she's in a camper. I don't know whether that's the reference. Someone said, could it be possible that trafficking is involved here? Trafficking is sort of like an abduction as well. You're going to need a third party. And again, you've got to say, well, where are the witnesses to that, of vehicles and all that kind of activity? It's not it's certainly a better line of reasoning than abduction, because there's some precedent to it. There's some backstory that sort of reveals it, right? But I think the reason why I'm not convinced of that is you would almost imagine on the day that Summer's supposed to be trafficked, you'd imagine, well, you wouldn't go swimming with her and then, her friend would say, well, where is she the next day? You know what I mean? You would imagine that she would be withdrawn gradually from view, and then someone would realize, well, wow, I haven't seen her for a while, right? In other words, trafficking, you would anticipate, is premeditated. Do you guys agree with that? Let's get a consensus here. Put a 1 if you agree. If you traffic, you tend to be planning to do it. You're going to do it whether there's an agreement. It's almost like having someone adopted, right? You agree and you've got to exchange money. So do you agree that it's probably premeditated? 1, yes, 2, no. Let's see what you guys say. Okay, so most of you say 1. I agree with that. I think if it's trafficking, it's premeditated, but then you, like I say, would you want someone to go swimming that day? Or would you want to sort of not be really in sight? The other possibility, and I'm prepared to acknowledge this, is if you're a drug addict, you might not premeditate for very long. The idea might occur to you half an hour before you do it. So I'm not saying that's not possible. I'm just saying I'm not sure if it's that likely. But trafficking your own child, I think, requires a certain amount of planning. And I don't see that here for a couple of reasons. The other problem is that, who was supposed to traffic Summer? And if your answer is whatever, well, then where was she for most of that day? And there are quite a few witnesses. Alison, I think Leslie also knew about it or saw something. Macbeth, and Candus herself and Grandma are with her most of the day. I've got a feeling the CCTV is going to be showing who is in the vehicle at certain times. I think that's going to be quite important for the CCTV to show the routes that the vehicle went and who was in the vehicle at that time. I'm talking about the CCTV of gas stations, ATMs even have CCTVs, and also, the parking lots of certain establishments, Payless and so on. Jackie Dobbs apparently took his profile down about 5 days ago. He referred to Ben Hill Road as Ben Hill Hell. Not exactly sure when that was. You can again go to Chasing Truth, look at the social media there. But I don't really get the sense that he liked I don't get the sense that he liked his neighbors, and I don't get the sense that they liked him. I could be wrong. Maybe someone can ask him, did you like your neighbors? If you were the neighbors to the Wells, would you be happy? Would you be happy with the dogs barking? Would you be happy with people getting intoxicated fairly often, shouting, screaming, the police coming by every now and then? I think they did come by, was the year earlier or something like that. How would you feel? The other thing that is interesting, is that Jackie Dobbs has got a red truck, right? And now, you can, if you're one of the abduction theorists, you can kind of pull up your socks and go, wow, right? The problem is that truck doesn't have ladders or paint buckets on it. That's kind of quite a idiosyncratic thing. So, you've got the red truck, but unfortunately you don't have that side of it. So, sorry, you don't even need to go into the Jackie Dobbs or anyone else very far just to ask one single question. I think it's the most underrated question in true crime. Does he have an alibi? It's one of the most underrated questions, because as simple as that, either you've got an alibi or you don't. And how do you have an alibi? Well, it's based on the timeline. And why would you want to hide away the timeline? Well, so that the alibi doesn't come into question. That's why you want to muddy the timeline. So if the timeline is clear and you have an alibi, it's really simple. Simple. You weren't there. According to him, he was at certain places, and I don't know whether his alibi checks out, but I would imagine that it does. According to him, he's been cleared. I don't know that for a fact, but I would imagine he is. Maybe he isn't. Does Jackie Dobbs have a past criminal record? I don't know. But do some other people have past criminal records? I'm not convinced that 2 weeks is enough time to do what he's sort of being suspected of doing here. He doesn't own a Toyota Tacoma either. As I say, there are no ladders or buckets on his vehicle. And so to me, the bottom line is, if he's the go-to suspect, why don't the Wells couple mention him? Why don't the Wells couple say, you know what, Jackie Dobbs lives just over here, and I had a bad feeling about him from the beginning. Why don't we hear that? Why doesn't anyone really say that? So at the end of the whole thing, is Jackie Dobbs a legitimate suspect? I would wager to say no, because it's not like the authorities don't know about him. They have spoken to him. He doesn't have this vehicle. Maybe he took ladders and stuff off. I don't think so. I mean, maybe he did, I don't know. You would think that if it was Jackie Dobbs, if they were in the crosshairs of law enforcement, that he would have had to have taken a polygraph. Has he? Who has law enforcement polygraphed? Because that's, I think, who they're interested in. Did any of Don's workers have a red truck with buckets? That's an excellent question. What sites did Don work on, right? So I do think it's interesting that he refers to Ben Hill Road as Ben Hill Hell. I think that's an interesting point from him. I think it reveals some of how he feels about the subject. What else have I got to talk about here? So let me ask you guys a question. So I don't know if any of you are new here that missed what I said earlier. Do you guys know what apologia is? So let's do a quick survey. Do you know now what apologia is? 1 yes, 2 no. Let's have a look. Okay, so far ones, mostly ones. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. There are 1 or 2 twos. So I'm gonna make it really simple to understand what I'm talking about. Do you think the Wells? Do you think the Wells couple, the Wells family, or whoever is behind the Find Summer Wells site? Do you think they would want my videos on that site? Do you think the Find Summer Wells website, do you think they would want my videos on there? And so some of you are answering no. That's the right answer. Yes, I don't think they would want my videos on there, right? Do you think they would want the interviews rooms videos on there? Well, they are on there. That's the difference. That's the difference. So the one is apologia and the other one isn't. The other thing with trafficking is, Daphne says, do you remember that case from Douglas's book about the tree trimmer that did abduct the 12-year-old? I'm not actually aware of it. I've got a couple of his books, but I'm not sure if I'm aware of that particular case. The other thing with trafficking is you would imagine that the last photo they would have of Summer would be of her alive and well. So in other words, almost like in all the last photos you see, for example, in the Laurie Vallow case, the last photo of JJ is happy and is at Yellowstone. That's the kind of last photo you can sort of brag about. You can show to everyone, look how happy he was. Nothing has happened to him. He's just gone to stay with grandma or grandpa or his aunt, right? So if you wanted to traffic, you would also want a photo of the child looking safe and happy so you could show to everyone, see, here's the proof that everything is fine. No, it's just not here now, it's gone somewhere else. Does that make sense? Right? And is Summer alive and well in the last photo? In the last photo we have of Summer, is she conscious? Is she talking? It's a video also, it's a video. Is she conscious? Is she talking? Is she moving? Is she moving voluntarily the way a normal child would move? Is she breathing? Is she alive in that last footage? S.M. Kovalinsky says apologia took root because someone is folkish and vulnerable, allowing someone else to profit, allow facts to lead, and the abduction theory fails. Was Summer customarily drugged to quiet her and failed to waken? That's a great point. I think that is a definite possibility. So you can imagine if you're a drug addict or you're a substance abuser, you might use substances to not only manipulate other people, but control other people, right? Control maybe your children. Some people are gonna hate me for saying this, but it's really just a joke. I have considered giving my dog, he goes out the door, like a little bit of beer to calm him down. I've never done it, but I've certainly thought about it. Thought about maybe this would kind of, the same thing it does to a person. I don't think it's a really good thing to do to an animal, and I haven't done it, but I'm just saying the thought has crossed my mind, right? So I think what I'm trying to say is I don't appreciate being led down the garden path of the intruder theory when I don't think it's likely. That's all. That's my personal opinion. I don't know how you guys feel, but I don't like being led down the garden path, and I think you know what I'm talking about. So the next thing I'm going to tell you guys about as we approach the 2-hour mark, it probably will only go on another 15 minutes, and that is the application of true crime rocket science in the real world. And I'm going to take you through a real life example that I've just gone through and show you why we do need to think critically. We need to think critically about this case. We need to learn how to think critically. And I'm going to illustrate what I mean by what it means to think critically in your everyday life, right? And what can happen with that. Timmy won't drink beer. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that to him. He only drinks water. So I had a really stressful week this week for a couple of reasons. I got vaccinated on Monday. Just quite a lot of things happened this week. One of the things that also happened was I tried to purchase a vehicle, right? I'm not rich enough to, let's see. Stephanie says, what do you think is the most disturbing part of Summer's last picture? Looking unconscious against a cold milk or being in a tracksuit on a hot day? That's from Mediocre Comedian. All of the above. The fact that she's not conscious, apparently, that she actually slumps down. You know, if you actually look at some of the photos, she actually slumps further down. I did a video about that. The fact that she's in the clothing that she's wearing, but beyond that, her face is pale. It's not. It's difficult to say because of the lighting, and you could say I'm pale, but this has an impact on it. So ambient light does have an impact on that. But if you compare her complexion in that photo to all the other photos that we see of her, I would say she looks amongst the most pale in that photo. Not pale as in, oh, you just look pale, but a potentially ominous pale. There's also, and I don't know if I'm seeing something, but there's a little bit of a bluish tint to her eyelids that I've noticed. And I don't know whether the redness by her mouth is from a sweet. It could be. It could also be from something else. I'm just saying that last photo doesn't inspire confidence. And who was with Summer when she took that last photo? Who took the last photo? And the stories we've gotten around that last photo don't add up. Meaning, we've heard Candus say that she was 5 minutes away from home and 2 minutes away from home when Summer fell asleep. In other words, when the last photo was taken, or around the time when that was taken. And yet you can actually see, and this is thanks to Tector Gorge, you can actually see where the vehicle actually was likely about 11 minutes away, where you came out of, I think, Murrell Drive. Not sure if I've got the name right. That's 11 minutes from home. I do think when Candus talks about driving very quickly, that really did happen, but I think the circumstances are different. So, what have I got here? Okay. I was going to take you guys through some of the notes that I took, but I'm not going to do that. So in terms of the true crime rocket science application in real life, this is actually quite interesting. So I decided to buy a second-hand vehicle this week, and I found the vehicle I wanted. And there were a couple of strange things going on. The vehicle that I wanted, there was the same vehicle, so the same color, the same model, both of them for exactly the same price, but they were apparently two different vehicles at two different dealers, right? So I found the vehicle online. Almost immediately, like within seconds of expressing my interest in the vehicle online, I got a phone call, right? And that kind of got the ball rolling. And I spoke to certain people trying to get information, trying to get advice. I'm certainly not an expert in vehicles. And but I was trying to gather information. I was trying to find out what I needed to know about vehicle financing, also about the type of vehicle I was buying, and just the overall situation dealing with second-hand car salesmen. Now think about what we're dealing with here. Again, we into the subject of true crime rocket science in the real world, right? And now you're dealing with second-hand car salesmen, and the issue is, can you trust them? Can you trust what they're saying? Can you rely on them? And there were people who were saying to me, be very careful, including my father. And then there were also people I was contacting that I sort of knew who sell vehicles, who were all trying to kind of manipulate me one way or the other. So I would sort of say to them, you know what, I'm interested in a vehicle from that person or that dealer. And then they say, no, that's a terrible vehicle. I've actually got a really good deal for you here. And so they didn't really want to provide advice or assistance. They wanted to manipulate me into their own thing. And then the same thing would happen with someone else. You'd sort of say, okay, can you advise me on this? And they'd say, that is a terrible make of vehicle, but I've got this for you. So it was very difficult to get advice from other dealers, right? Long story short, I did all the things I needed to do. I took the vehicle for a test drive. I researched the vehicle. I was reliably informed that up to October 2019, this type of vehicle had actually been recalled because of problems with the transmission, right? And I was also under the impression that the vehicle I was going to buy was 2020 vehicle, right? I'm not going to take you through all the details, but long story short, I was supposed to really put down a payment today for the vehicle. It's a second-hand vehicle. And I contacted my insurer to basically say, you know, what would the insurance be on this vehicle? And the insurance, to her credit, answered pretty quickly. And she said, okay, I need to know the make. I need to know this, that, and the next thing. And it was while doing that we actually established that it wasn't a 2020 model. And when I contacted the guy to address this, right? So he had somehow just, I don't know, kept that information from me. When I confronted him with it, he said something like, you know what, it was actually made in September 2019. So I sort of rounded it off. So I sort of made it 2020. It's kind of the same thing. So I said, that's ridiculous. You know, you can't do that. You can't. No one does that. You can't make a vehicle 1 year younger than it is, you know. And anyway, long story short, I didn't want to have an argument with this guy or anything like that. I just called up his manager and I said, you know what, I've been misled. And, you know, I wasn't angry or anything. I just said, I've been misled. I did mention to this guy that there's another vehicle that's, and I'd actually misunderstood, because there were these two vehicles, exactly the same price. One at a certain mileage and another different mileage. I'm not going to go through all the numbers and so on, but I told him I had been misled, and I said, I even mentioned, wow, there's another vehicle that's also being sold, and it's actually a year older than this one. And he said to me, wow, you're getting such a good deal. So you're getting such a good deal with us. And then the other thing that I mentioned was, so in other words, if I can just put this into perspective, right? Thanks a lot, Pumi Bell. Thanks very much. Timmy is down there. When a vehicle depreciates at 20% per year that goes by, right? And if you say the wrong year, you actually can make 20% more money on the vehicle, and with a sizable sum that can be quite a lot of money. And anyway, long story short, as a result of checking and some critical thinking, finding out about the vehicle, some people would say, I wouldn't have been misled in that situation. Maybe you're right. And I'm sure that some other people will be misled, that they simply won't think to do this. But I was able to save probably quite a lot of money because I was able to see the scheme that was being perpetrated. And I've got to tell you, I've already, stupidly, I've already deposited a little bit of money in terms of the vehicle, but without signing the contract, without signing anything. And in a way that's fortunate, because if I had signed something, I probably would be stuck, but I did say when I handed over a little bit of the money, I said, shouldn't I be given some documentation, right? And the guy said, no, only once you paid the full deposit, right? And anyway, so ultimately I canceled the whole deal. I called another dealer, and he basically said, I can get you exactly the same vehicle, a 2020 model with something like 10,000 kilometers. I'm not sure what that is in miles, maybe 6,000. And so hopefully it's going to have a happily ever after ending. But the point is that I would love to give you the actual numbers, but I just want to be a bit coy about that. The amount that would actually have been that I would have paid in addition for a vehicle that was actually defective, plus paying interest on that amount, was actually incredible. And in other words, I would have been paying that if my thinking had been lazy, right? And so it makes sense to be strict in your thinking and to be critical in your thinking and to get as much information. And I want to sort of close off by basically saying, I don't know if you guys have ever bought a vehicle, but there's like a fairy tale involved in it. It's like a brand new, this isn't a brand new vehicle, but it was fairly new, and I did test drive it, and it was really, it was a nice car to drive, and I was looking forward to sort of showing it off to people and whatnot, and all of that kind of stuff, all of that narcissistic stuff, right? And that can cloud your ability to think about the other side, which is just simple. Is this a good deal? Is the car going to be reliable? Is it going to give me problems? Blah, 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 right? And if you're caught up in the fairy tale, you're not thinking about the nuts and bolts stuff that you should be thinking about, right? And I've also got to say I was quite distracted by lots of things that were going on this week. Like I said, I got vaccinated, but quite a few other things were going on. And to be honest, I was like, if this deal falls through, it's not going to be the end of the world, because I just don't have time to do all the ins and outs. But in the end, it was about to go through. Like the financing had been approved. All I had to do was sign the contract. But when I sorted it out with the insurer, they wanted to see the VIN number and all that kind of thing. And they said, well, this is a 2019 model. And they appraised it. The insurers appraised it at, I'll just say several $1,000s below the actual, the value that I was going to pay for it. Right? And so do you want to be that stupid? just because you didn't bother to get the information. I'm talking about in true crime. Do you want to be that stupid about information, or also in your own life? Just take a little bit of time to think critically. And that's why when I put up that video about wells in hiding, it would take you about a second to figure out what that was really about. It would take you a second just to think about it. And that is what we are challenged to do in true crime, is to think. And then to apply that ability to patiently think and patiently go through a problem, but not, as far as I'm concerned, the patience of an apologist because, if you look at the McCann case, it's like, we will eventually find Madeleine, but we're not going to look for her right now. Maybe one day she'll just sort of walk out of the ether and we'll live happily ever after. Not that kind of patience. Where you have the stamina to pursue certain lines of thinking and reasoning, right? You've got, think about the discipline of these Olympians. What's the difference between the one who gets the gold medal and the one who comes second? Probably a mixture of belief, but also more work, harder work, more work ethic. Not always, maybe it can come down to luck and talent, but I'm just saying you can save yourself a nightmare by just thinking a little bit further than you normally would. And in terms of my case, let's say I'd signed off on this deal, I would have ended off with a vehicle that is defective, that does overheat and's got many problems, simply because I just didn't check a simple thing like, well, it was the day 2019 or 2020. And whose fault would that have been? If figured it out down the line, I would have to pay this amount off, or I would need to try and resell the vehicle. And who's the poor schmuck who's now going to buy it? You don't want to be in that position. And so you go from the fairy tale of, I want a vehicle and, it smells nice and so on, into a nightmare because you weren't thinking critically. And that's what we've got to try and do. I hope I've helped you guys in that respect. And that's what I'm trying to convey with True Crime Rocket Science. I'm trying to show you how fragmented thinking isn't good. You need to think in a cohesive way, in an integrated way, in a way that brings the fragments together, doesn't accept broken fragments all over the place. We want to bring the picture together, right? Let me look at some of your comments. Get a James Bond car. Work ethic 99% of the time. Ask the right questions and use critical thinking. I must say, getting the answers isn't nearly as important as asking the right questions. If you ask the right question, it doesn't really matter what the answer is. Whatever the answer is going to be an answer, even if it's not the answer, if that makes sense. So, when I was speaking to these dealers and you sort of mentioned certain things, you can see that they're trying to dodge the answer, and that's already an answer in itself. Carew Ross, thank you very much. Thanks for that. Stephanie says, relatable, real life scenarios. The Princess says, great stream today. Thanks, the Princess. I think that's about it from me, guys. There's some interesting content that I want to still do on this channel, but I'll leave that for a little bit later. I also don't want to give away what I'm going to do, then other creators will do it. I am going to be doing StreamYard. I know I actually said previously that this weekend we would be doing StreamYard. I'm sorry, I just have not had time to set it up. I'd like to promise you guys that the very next live stream will be with StreamYard, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to say probably the next live stream will be that. I'm just a little bit unfamiliar with it. I just need to buy it. I am going to buy it probably today or tomorrow. They've actually got a special offer right now. So I am going to set it up, and then I'm really looking forward to having some of the patrons on and some of the people I know on, so they can talk to you about how they feel about some of the issues that we've been speaking about. Francis Dean, dogs barking that day. Did any one of the boys go down to the basement while no one was home? Did one of the boys let someone in the house that they knew? I think the boys probably know quite a lot. The issue is whether they can or will say that. But the fact that there's 3 boys, you'd think you're going to somehow get to some kind of consistent statement between the 3 of them somehow. Sinead Devlin says, thanks, good night here. It's always so sad when there are like 1,800 of you here to let you guys go, but I'm going to do that. Let me just go through some of your Carla Jean Feder. Thank you. Good discussion. Thanks for that. Yes, the boys would crack. Gigi Alight. Thank you. I will go back and listen. Elizabeth Link. I think Summer was treated differently than the boys. The question is how? What about Jose sneaking in the bedroom door? The Wells are not poor. Alina Wolf, have a good evening. What is Boylan's Happily Ever After? Nick, you are doing so much incredible. Okay, thanks a lot. Sharon Tuck, Nick, you really gave a reality check today. Thank you. Thanks, Sharon. Lisa Cummings, thanks. Sweet Bear, what about Candus leaving in her mom's truck without her phone before the police came? Yes, absolutely. Why is Candus putting her phone into Don's truck? It suggests that either her phone went somewhere with Don on June the 15th or Candus and her phone went with Don on June the 15th. Is there a trip with Don that is not being acknowledged? Is there a trip where Candus and Don went together somewhere on June the 15th that is not being acknowledged? Corin Dossie, Candus accidentally overdosed on Granny's pills. That's a possibility. I think the possibility of an accident is a possibility. But I must say, between something happening at the swimming hole, like going under the water a long time, don't know why I'm carrying 3 pens here. There's another one. It could be both. It could be a combination of that and swimming. I am the clairvoyant 4. It says Candus doesn't use the car air conditioning. Yeah, it doesn't seem so. Also, aren't the windows open when she's driving? And if Candus was cold, would the window be open? It's a question. Was the window open when she was driving, and the video was taken? Are you married? No, I'm not. Gigi Alight, very similar to McCann. Thanks for insight. Chris made me feel guilty. Okay. So I think in closing, I just want to say the following. That, some people think that I'm judging the Wells family harshly, or that, if their home isn't tidy, that's a problem or whatever. And they seem to be making the case that I'm trying to make this personal. In other words, I've got a bone to pick with this person or that person or whatever. And my job is to be neutral and to be someone who prosecutes a case. And what I mean by that is I gather the information the same way as a lawyer would. It's a little bit different because I obviously don't appear in court and that side doesn't actually happen, but I nevertheless do the same thing. I prosecute the case via a narrative based on the evidence as I see it, right? And so I'm not, I don't have an agenda. No matter what case I'm dealing with, I'm simply dealing with the information as I get it. And I could be wrong. In this particular case, we don't know what the outcome is. I could be wrong. I'm simply saying I don't have an agenda. If it turns out that something changes things, like tomorrow, if they say, what is something that's fairly conceivable? One thing that I haven't heard from again is, do you remember there was supposedly a bicyclist with a cam on his bicycle at Warrior Path Park? What was seen on that video? That's something I wouldn't mind seeing. I think that particular person said something like he saw the boys swimming with Summer. I'm not sure if it was that person or Macbeth or Macbeth's girlfriend, but that led to a rumor that the little boys were there as well, which isn't true. But if there was some kind of something that could legitimately take you in a different direction, then I would be the first person. If it was like logical, I would be the first person to go in that direction. The problem is when the fabric starts to manifest, all these pieces start fitting together, and one thing that just kind of tangentially goes off that way. You still need to explain, okay, why are there all these consistencies here and these problems there and that and that and that? And so a tangential thing tends not to explain that, if that makes sense. Typically with human behavior, we are composites of a lot of patterns and habits and things that repeat themselves, and things don't tend to be random. There are cases where you do have random aspects, like the Yorkshire Ripper, but even in that, there's a pattern of randomness, if that makes sense. Let's just look at some of your last comments. I'm going to take a couple of questions if there are a couple of you here. Stephanie says, love Summer. So, Pauline Buckles, why would Candus say Macbeth went running into the woods right away at the swimming hole? What's that about? Good point. Gail, love your channel, your detail, and speak straight. Surprised YouTube keeps turning off your comments. I think what that's all about, and just to be clear, I'm not turning off the comments. I'm not sure if I've ever done that on YouTube. I think it's because it's an ongoing investigation. It is sensitive, and what certain people are saying can be legally sensitive for YouTube. Like making accusations at this legally uncertain juncture in terms of the legal status of this case. I think YouTube itself could be in trouble, and so it's just easier to not put them there. Bria Lace, yes, Darlene, did Macbeth just stay in his wet clothes? What time did they swim? He was dropped off at 2:30. Thomas says, could they have conspired to remove Summer because CPS was about to discover that? I suppose, the question is, how can I put this? Why then? Why on that day? If there was what you're talking about, and it, presumably it wasn't the first time it had happened. Why that day? But when you take the word abuse, substance abuse, being abusive, with your language, well, in how many other areas can you apply abuse? And this is a family where there's a lot of excess and extreme stuff going on. Unfortunately. Can you hear Timmy snoring? I'm going to be quiet for a second so you can hear him. So I'm Timmy's ASMR, right? Okay. Pandora's box. I just sitting on a tote bag. That's the cutest. Yeah. Timmy is adorable. He's precious. Yeah. Okay. Candus appears slow either from that or that. I don't think. Okay. Nonna says, great show, Nick. Okay, so we're at 2 hours, 15 minutes. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I had a little bit to get off my chest. I hope I haven't been too direct. I try and be nice about what I'm trying to say, but I also need to be clear on this particular topic. I hope no one's feelings are too hurt, just my position. And I think it is important to be clear on my position as opposed to other people that are putting their position. I also just want to say again, I don't have any experts around me. It's just me, and my expertise is based on writing all the books that I've written, and my readers know the work that I put into it and know how well read and well informed I am and how much time I spend collecting information and figuring your way through it. And that's true crime rocket science. So thank you for all being here. If you could all give a like, then we can maybe push the likes up again to 1,000. There we go. Again, Raymond Schramm, Timmy didn't do it. He was sleeping. That's good. There is a Timmy in this story. She was vanished after accidentally. Okay. Nick, please make us a shirt that says intertextuality for sure. Okay, there we are. There we go. Thanks, guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday and a great weekend. And I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.